What is up, you guys? Glitches here, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be bringing you my ultimate updated critical pulse crossbow build for the end game. I've had some time to test out some new armor as well as get some more balanced legendary mods, and I have some big improvements that I've made that I want to share with you guys. There's also going to be some significant changes and a bonus recommended armor set that I'm going to want you guys to craft if you're on a Lunar Oracle server, specifically for this build as well, but we'll go over that here in a second. So let's kick things off with the weapons. So out of the gate, we're obviously going to be using the critical pulse crossbow, the new power surge crossbow. This is an insane weapon, great for AoE damage, and really good for the Lunar Oracle event. If we click on it, the weapon features are: it triggers continuous power surge on hit with a 70% chance to generate a deviated particle. These are little gold orbs that will spawn on the ground when you either kill an enemy, hit an enemy, trigger power surge, and or chain react to other enemies. Once you pick it up, you will get put into what's called a charge state. But moving on, the continuous power surge from the weapon can trigger every 0.5 seconds within a 3-second period on the current target, which means that you can get up to 6 procs of power surge for every 1 instance that you trigger this effect, which is really cool. And the higher stacks of this particular effect will shorten the interval down to 0.26 seconds, stacking up to 5 times, which means if you hit the same target more and more and more, one after another, you will actually build those stacks and charge your power surge procs more quickly. So keep that in mind. The thing next, which is in parentheses, dealing 50% damage to player, that is actually a mistype or a mistranslation from the Chinese servers. What they actually mean by that is your power surge procs will do 50% damage to players, which means for PvP, you're going to be doing 50% less damage than what you'd be doing to a normal enemy. So that's what they meant by that. It's just a translation error, so keep that in mind. Moving on, while in the charge state, when you pick up a deviated particle, hitting a target will consume one of those charges, creating an orb of lightning that deals shock elemental status damage of 75% the psi intensity that you have in your build to targets within 5 meters every 0.5 seconds. This damage benefits from power surge damage bonuses and has a 5% chance to generate deviated particles as well that will last for 3 seconds. So not only can you get the deviated particles to spawn when you yourself trigger power surge on an enemy, at least the one you're shooting, but the chain reaction that happens to other enemies also has a chance to spawn those deviated particles, which is pretty cool as well. And then the final perk makes your shock elemental damage get increased by an additional 30% flat out. So that's just a nice bonus icing on the cake, if you will, that you get just for using this weapon, which is really cool. As for the calibration, I pretty much have the best calibration that you can possibly get. We are just shy of maxing out both substats. You only get 2 potential options for gold mods with crossbows right now. One is going to be portable style, the other is going to be precision. I would personally recommend the portable style. With precision, you get a little bit more base attack, which isn't a big deal because we're firing a single shot type weapon. The big downside with precision, though, is that you get a minus 25 or higher negation to your reload speed, and we want as fast as reload speed as possible. So with portable style, we get to keep our normal reload speed, but we're going to be getting a bonus movement speed while firing. That gets increased by 50. Weapon switch speed plus 50, which is great because we're going to be using a bullseye weapon for a secondary to swap between constantly. So we get bonus swap speed there, and we get bonus movement speed plus 12.5% while holding the gun itself. So that's some nice bonuses there. But regardless of whether you use precision or portable style, the substats that you're going to want is definitely for both going to be double elemental damage. As you can see, the one that I got is very, very good. I got plus 7.3 out of 8% for the first roll and plus 11.5% out of 12 for the second roll. I haven't fully calibrated it to plus 10, so I haven't unlocked that second trait, but in terms of percentages, those are about as high of percentages as I've seen yet. I've got almost max for both, so that's really, really good, and pretty much the exact thing that you're going to want to look for the calibration on this particular weapon. So keep that in mind. As for the mod, I run the static shock talent mod. Your power surge status duration will be decreased by 50%. However, your power surge damage will be increased by 20%, and you're going to ideally want elemental status damage, damage to great ones, and or if you have a good roll on it, some of the lunar and or bonus power surge damage specific mods, because this weapon does benefit from power surge modifiers, like it said in the tooltip. So those are some good ones that you can potentially get on here as well. Moving on to the secondary weapon, I use the Wildfire pistol. Calibration really doesn't matter. Personally, I like to put portable on all my secondary weapons just for the increased swap speed. You don't have to worry about the secondary substats because we're really going to be only using this to mark targets. But basically how it works, if we click on it and go to weapon features, is there is a 60% chance to trigger the bullseye effect when hitting a target. And what bullseye does, if we hover over it, is a highlighted marked target will be outlined and suffer plus 8% vulnerability, which basically means they take 8% more damage. We will combo this with the mod called Vulnerability Amplifier to add an additional plus 8% to that vulnerability modifier. So now anytime you mark a target, they will take plus 16% damage instead of plus 8. And because of the secondary effect of this weapon, if we click on it, there is an 80% chance to spread that bullseye to one additional enemy within 15 meters. So if you continuously shoot a single enemy and there's a big mob of them, chances are you're probably going to mark 2 or 3 other ones. So you can spread those marks pretty quickly with this gun, which is really nice. So you just mark up a bunch of enemies, get some 16% bonus damage to them all, switch to your crossbow, and then just AoE burn all of them down in a matter of seconds. So that's the combo we're going to be running there. And then for the melee weapon, I like to run the long axe. I pretty much use this for every single build just for some extra bonus damage. And the reason being is it's the only weapon that's melee weapon that can activate Fortress Warfare with a full heavy attack swing. You will activate Fortress Warfare. And what that does, if we hover over that, for those of you that don't know, is you will get a 2-meter radius buff for you and your allies that gives them super armor for 5 seconds, and that super armor will give you plus 20% bonus weapon damage. So it's just some behind the scenes bonus damage flat out that you're going to be giving you and all of your allies that are standing in your little buff circle. So you just do one heavy attack, activate it, and then you get an additional weapon buff. And then I combo this with the portable territory mod, because after leaving Fortress Warfare, the status of Fortress Warfare will remain for an additional 2 seconds, so it just extends that damage window a little bit longer, and pretty much the only one in particular that I would recommend for this particular weapon. So that's what I run there. So that is all the weapons, all the weapon calibrations and mods that I would recommend for the build. Moving on to the armor, and there's actually 2 completely different sets if you're on a Lunar Oracle server, a hard mode server, that I would recommend crafting. Now for the daytime, when you're just running around during the day and killing enemies normally, the set that I would recommend building is going to be 4-piece Blackstone, 1-piece Renegade for the shoes, and the Overload pants for the key item. Now in my previous beginner build for this bow, I know I was using the Mayfly goggles, and I still stand by that, because early on when you have lower damage mods, your gear isn't quite as good, your science intensity isn't quite as high, and you're not going to be participating in the Crimson Lunar Moon event as much. The Mayfly goggles, especially if you have it maxed out to like a 4 or 5 star, will do more single target damage, because you don't have to worry about the thunderclap proccing as much on single targets with Mayfly because of the bonus 1/2 trigger count. However, in the late game, once you get better mods and you're focusing on enemies with a much higher HP pool, you're going to want something that'll put out the same amount of damage but do it quicker, and that is exactly what the Overload pants does. So after triggering Power Surge 20 times, the next 6 shots in your bag will be consumed from reserve ammo instead of the normal magazine, which means you basically don't have to reload for the next 6 shots, and your shock damage will actually be increased by an additional 20%. So you're getting a slight damage boost in comparison to the Mayfly goggles right out of the gate, because Mayfly goggles actually gets a negative 30%. You are losing out on Power Surge trigger chance. However, when you're doing Lunar Oracle events and or endgame content, you're typically going to be running into packs of mobs that are greater than 1. And if you have 2 to 3 enemies at any given time, the trigger chance from my testing is about every 3 to 4 shots on this, which means you will be getting a ton of free ammunition where you won't have to reload, and you'll be able to pump out that damage about twice as fast compared to the Mayfly goggles. So in my testing, if you were just doing it against a dummy, the max damage after the same amount of rounds is only about a 1 to 2,000 DPS difference, with the Mayfly goggles actually beating it out. However, the time that it takes to pump that damage out is actually twice as fast on the overloaded pants. So if you're taking the time into consideration, you're actually doing more damage faster with the overload pants in the end game than you would with the Mayfly goggles, because you don't have to worry about reloading. So that is why I'm running these in my end game build, and why I'm running these particular armor pieces for the daytime. So keep that in mind. This is specifically when the Crimson Moon isn't live. I have a whole nother set that I want you guys to craft that I'll go over here in a second. But for the mods themselves on each of these pieces, they're going to be pretty much exactly the same that I had in my previous build. So for the Blackstone helmet, we're going to be running Deviation Expert, minus 25% to range. Not a big deal because Power Surge doesn't have any fall off, but we get plus 10% fire rate and plus 20% bonus status damage. This has another option that you can potentially run, because I said earlier you want to try and get your status damage multiplier and your elemental damage multiplier as close together as possible to do maximum damage. Just to give you an example, if you had 100 status damage and 100 elemental damage, you multiply those together and you're going to be getting 10,000 damage modifier total. Now, if you had 90 status damage and 110 elemental, when you add those two sums together, it's exactly the same as 100 and 100, but when you multiply them, you're only getting 9,900. So because your two values are slightly spaced apart, you're actually doing slightly less damage because of how multiplication works. So ideally, you want your status damage and your elemental damage to be as close to each other as possible to get the most damage as possible. And that is where these two mod options come from. So if you need more status damage, run Deviation Expert. If you need more elemental damage, the other option that you can run is called Work Proficiency. So we'll go over here, and it's going to be right here. And what this does is basically the same thing as Deviation Expert, except it gives you elemental damage instead of status damage. When reloading with an empty mag, which we'll be doing all the time because it's a single shot weapon, you get plus 10% reload speed and a 20% elemental damage boost instead of status damage. So Work Proficiency, still a very good option for your helmet if you need more elemental instead of status damage. So keep that in mind. But moving on, for the mask, we are running the Blackstone mask, and I run the Thunderclap Talents mod. This will, after triggering Power Surge 20 times, the next hit will summon a Celestial Thundershock that deals 200% psi intensity. So it's basically a giant lightning bolt that will come down and just do a big splash of damage and kind of give you a nice damage spike every time you trigger Power Surge 20 times, which is very quickly done with this particular build because of how fast we AoE and chain Power Surge to multiple enemies at once. So pretty much the go-to mod for your mask for this particular build. And again, you're going to want status damage, elemental damage, damage to great ones, and potentially reload speed for your suffixes, for your substats. So try and go for that. Moving on to the chest piece, we have the Blackstone top. I personally run Flame Resonance for the plus 12% status damage. I've got some bonus status damage on this as well. However, some other options, if you have some good gold mods, would be something like Rejuvenating, depending on your server, for extra survivability when your HP is above 60%. If you're running this particular set, which I wouldn't recommend during the Crimson Moon events at night during a Lunar Oracle server, you could run something like Ardent Shield or Status Immune to give you some more survivability. Hopefully, you would find versions of these that have Lunar Oracle mods on it that give you bonus status damage, or just straight up bonus status and elemental damage right out of the gate for your substats. So I would try to get ones, if you're going to run either of these, that have those substats, just so you're getting some offensive boost from it as well. But those are also good defensive options early on if you feel like you're dying too easily or don't have the second set that I'm going to recommend here in a minute. So keep that in mind. Moving on to the pants, we already went over this, but we're going to be running the Overload pants, and the mod that I run on this is going to be Abnormal Increase. This is pretty much the only mod that I would recommend for this build for the pants, because it's the only one that gives a status damage boost when the magazine is empty, which happens all the time because we're running a single shot weapon. You get a 10% plus status damage bonus, which can stack up to 3 additional times, so 30% more status damage there once we ramp this up, which is really good. And again, elemental, status, reload speed, damage to great ones, you're going to want that on this mod as well. Moving on to the gloves, we have 2 options for this, similar to the helmet. The one I'm running is going to be Elemental Overload. Your elemental damage, in this case shock, will get a plus 18% bonus. I've got elemental and HP on here. Ideally, I'd have some more status damage as well, or potentially a lunar perk on here. But if you need more status damage, then the other option you have that you can use is going to actually be status enhancement. Instead of the 18% elemental damage, this gives you plus 20% status damage. Unfortunately, I don't have a good one that has elemental perks on it, so that's why I'm running the Elemental Overload. But like I said, we want to try and get those two values as close together as possible. So if you're lacking in some status damage, then this is another great option to help balance that out. So keep that in mind as an alternative. And then last but not least, for the boots, we're running one piece Renegade because the one piece set bonus will give us increased reload speed. And because we're running a single shot weapon again, we want to be able to reload as quickly as possible. And for the mod, the go-to one that I would recommend is the Covered Advance mod. Taking no damage within 4 seconds will grant plus 20% melee, weapon, and status damage for 30 seconds. So a very easy mod to equip, and I pretty much use this in all of my builds to get some bonus element and weapon damage right out of the gate. And again, same subsets that we're going to be shooting for. Another option that you could potentially get that I haven't gotten a good roll on was a tactical one. I think it's one of the newer mods. I don't even think I've gotten it yet, but there is one particular one that's based on stamina and another one that's based on your health, insanity, that has the potential to do some decent damage as well. But honestly, Covered Advance has been around a lot longer, and most people probably have this already. So this is the one that I would typically recommend for the shoes. So that is all of the armor and mods that I would recommend when fighting during the daytime. Now, if you're fighting at night, during the Crimson Moon event on a Lunar Oracle hard server, there is a whole new armor set that actually does way more damage that I would recommend crafting for this particular event, and that is the Treacherous Depths armor set. So we'll go over here and I'll switch to this one, and we'll equip this. Armor or weapons and mods are going to be exactly the same. We're still going to be using the overloaded pants and the Renegade shoes, but now instead of the Blackstone set, we want to use the Treacherous Tide set. I said depths, but I meant Treacherous Tides. This is the new armor set that just came out for this new lunar cycle season. And after doing some testing during the lunar cycle, the perks on this make you do a ton of extra damage. So how it works is the one perk bonus gives you 10% reduced weapon damage reduction, so some extra survivability there. The 2-piece bonus is when your HP is above 70%, your weapon damage and status damage is plus 12, so you get a much lower bonus during the day because you're only getting 12% basically. The majority of the damage you're getting from this is only when your sanity is low, which is why I said only use this set at night. The other set will be better during the day. You'll do more damage with the Blackstone set during the day, but at night, when you have a 4-set bonus with this, the 3-perk bonus, HP reduction from low sanity will be decreased by 40%, which means instead of having this much health during a Lunar Oracle event, you will now have half your health bar because the maximum sanity that gets reduced during the Crimson Moon is actually affected by this perk. But you also get weapon and status damage plus 10%, which further increases as your sanity drops down up to a maximum of 28%. So you're almost getting 30% bonus status damage at night when your sanity drops because of the Crimson Moon. It also will generate a shield equal to 20% of your max HP when your health drops below 40%, which when you're that low of sanity, if you accidentally get hit, can actually happen quite frequently. So not only is your sanity bar going to be less, so you won't have to worry about getting one shot, but you get a bonus shield at low health with this set as well at night when you're fighting these harder enemies to keep you alive further as well. So for the lunar cycle, the Crimson Moon events between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. during the Red Moon event, not only will your damage be much higher, but for that event in particular, your survivability will be much higher. And I'll show you the damage test differences right now. So moving on to the helmet, I won't go through all these again, but again, these will be exactly the same. Deviation expert or work proficiency on the helmet. For the mask, we have Thunderclap. For the gloves, we have Elemental Overload or Status Enhancement. For the chest, Flame Resonance or a good gold mod with offensive sub-perks. For the boots, we have Covered Advance. And for the mask, or pants rather, we already went over the mask, Abnormal Increase. So mods are exactly the same as the other build. We're just using 4-piece Treacherous Tides instead of 4-piece Blackstone. The shoes and the pants will stay exactly the same. But this is what you want to run and have saved as a loadout from the hours of 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. in-game time when you're farming those lunar chests. So here is the damage test, and I'll do the damage test first before we go. Actually, before we do the damage test, let's go over the food that I would recommend and your Cradle Perks and things like that. So for the Cradle, what do we have here? I still have 2 that I have to unlock, but I can go over what I would recommend. First and foremost, you're going to want anti-phase to give plus 15% damage when using crossbows, as well as 100% bonus damage against anomaly phase, which we have anomaly, phase, void, and coherence on these hard mode servers. You can also take anti-coherence as one of the ones I'm missing for bonus damage when using your wildfire pistol. Moving on to the second row, I would take Tactical Combo for 15% bonus weapon damage after switching weapons or reloading, which we'll be doing all the time. Status Enhancement for 15% more status damage when hitting a weak spot. Deviant Energy Defense, when summoning your deviation, you get a shield equal to 30% your max HP. When the shield is active, you get weapon damage reduction and status damage reduction plus 10% as well, so some more survivability. On the third row, definitely want to take Elemental Sense for the 25% bonus elemental damage after dealing elemental damage. We can skip this row, and on the last row, I would pick up Transient Impact for 2.5% bonus power surge that can stack up to 10 times, and Bounty Hunter, which will combo well with our Wildfire Bullseye pistol. First marking a target will grant plus 2% attack for 15 seconds, and that can stack up to 5 additional times. So some good added damage when using the Bullseye combination. You can also, if you have a flex slot, pick up something like Chaotic Thoughts, which will make you do 10% more damage and get a 10% damage reduction when you have a whim because of low sanity during the Crimson Moon events at night. Or you can take Resilience when your sanity is below 30%. You get 30% reduced damage from deviation or deviance as well. So that's a nice little defensive perk there that you can take too. So those are sort of the flex ones that you can put in. But the ones I have equipped, those are the main ones, including Bounty Hunter, that you're going to want to take at all times. Moving on to the deviation of choice, you pretty much have 3 options. If you're going fully offensive, the best in slot, in my opinion, is going to be the Mini Feaster. You can get these from high level, basically those circle in the sky events, kind of like what is going on outside of my base right now. They drop from these little events, and my base just happens to be on top of one, so I'm actually going to exit the dungeon and get back to you guys here in a second. All right, sorry about that, guys. I had to quickly exit out of that public event. My base is built right on top of it, and it interrupted the video, so we're back. But as I was saying, the 3 deviation choices that I would recommend, best in slot being the Mini Feaster, can actually come from those different chests from the public events. Well, yeah, sort of public events, but the little circle in the skies, they drop from there. I got a nice 4/4. But the reason why those are good, if we run down to my handy dandy deviation room, new base video coming soon as well. The reason why that is good, if we go to the Mini Feaster, is because of this bonus right here. So for every tentacle that this little guy summons, the player's status damage will be increased by 17.5% up to a maximum of 70%. And if you have a level skill rating of 5, that maximum will increase to 80%. So for our build, which fully wraps around elemental and status damage, having this deviation out that gives this 70%, 80% potentially max damage boost to status damage, you will see a huge spike in damage with this build whenever you have this deviation out for offensive stuff. If you don't have a good one, another decent option would be a lunar or regular rolled wolf. That has good aggro holding, so it can detour enemies from hitting you, so you have some more breathability, and gives you a nice little weapon damage buff. And then if you want pure survivability and don't have some of the endgame gear, you can actually run one of these little festering gels. These are good because not only does it heal you, but it also reduces your sanity, which is a big thing that happens during these Crimson Moon events. Obviously, our sanity gets reduced. So as long as you're standing near this, your sanity will get healed over time, which is really nice. And I believe you can get a secondary perk on these, which also gives you a small status damage boost as well, similar to the blue shiny variant of the festering gel. I think you can get that on the red one, the lunar version as well. So that is another option. But for straight up damage, by far, the Mini Feaster is the one that I would recommend because of that huge status damage boost. Moving on to food. The few food items that I would recommend, best in slot for the drink would be the Whimsical Drink, used to gain a flat 25% status damage boost. For the food option, because you can have one of each, I would either recommend the, Sparkling Pumpkin Soup. This will give another plus 10% to your power surge damage. Or you can potentially run the surprise spring roll. This will give a 5 to 15% elemental damage boost, which will double if your HP is below 40%, which if you have a ton of sanity, your HP at night will be below 40% pretty much all the time. So that potentially has a big boost in elemental damage from that food as well. You could potentially also run the roulette dumplings, which is another new lunar recipe, which will give you a flat 15% bonus to either elites, bosses, or normal deviations. And if you're doing this during a lunar oracle at night, you get all three of those benefits at once. So you're getting plus 15% to pretty much everything that you're attacking. So that's another potential good option you can run if it's nighttime and you're farming those lunar oracle chests. So keep that in mind. So that is the good food options. Also, while we're down here, the other thing I forgot to mention in my previous video is once you get tier 5 gear, you're going to want to start picking specific hides to attach to your armor when you craft them as well. So before you go and craft your tier 5 for the first time, these are what I put on my armor in particular to get the best possible effects. I'll switch over to my other one because I have slightly better perks that I had hide-wise on my Blackstone set. So these are ideally the ones that you're going to want to run across the board. So for the helmet, I'm running the wolf skin. This will give plus 5% weak spot damage reduction. On the mask, I like to run lunar rabbit fur. This will give plus 5% elemental damage, which will double to 10% if your HP is below 30%, which is nice during the Crimson Lunar Moon events at night. When your HP gets reduced by quite a bit, you get a nice elemental damage buff from that fur. Moving on to the gloves, I like to put on lunar wool. Pretty much any gloves that you use, lunar wool, in my opinion, at least for lunar oracle server events on hard mode, will be the best option you can get, because that will increase the yield of the lunar whispers that you get from killing enemies during that little time window from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. And it doubles it if your HP is below 30. So plus 40% yield on lunar whispers. You will get a ton of them on every kill during the event. So highly recommend lunar wool on your gloves across the board. Moving on to the shoes. The one I run on the shoes is going to be the lunar wolf skin. This will give you plus 5% movement speed, which will double if your health is below 30% as well. So 30%, 10% movement speed there. And then for the jacket, I run the wolf skin for plus 15% stamina. And then on the pants, I believe it's the same thing. So if we go over here, we have plus 15% from the wolf skin on our pants for stamina. So if you look at my meter, that's why I have the extra bonus stamina bar above my normal ring. So you can just sprint and run around for a very long period of time and not have to worry about your stamina running low. So that's really cool there. And just like that, the lunar has started. So let's jump up and show the benefits of this new Treacherous Tides armor set. So if I go over here, and I'll probably I have to go outside of my territory to lower my stamina. But once the stamina is reduced, that is when the bonus perks of this armor set really come into play. So let me go and get my sanity reduced here. And once it's fully to 50%, which you'll notice with the Blackstone set, this will go all the way down. So I might as well let it go all the way down here and then just switch to my Treacherous Tide set to show you the benefits. So let's let the sanity go all the way down. It should go lower. You go to about a quarter of your health bar with the Blackstone set, but with the Treacherous set, if you had it equipped right from the beginning, it'll only go to half your health bar. So you're getting some extra survivability. So keep that in mind. For the damage test, we'll try and get as big a benefit as possible, and you'll see the damage difference once we switch over. So we're almost there. So there we go. Now if we go to our armor, go to gear, and switch over to our Lunar Surge set, which has the Treacherous Tides armor, you'll notice that instantly, all of a sudden, all of our other perks are going to activate because we have sanity. Actually, as soon as you equipped it, your sanity drops right away. It caps you at halfway, so you have a lot more health and survivability right out of the gate, but that half sanity is enough to activate all the perks, which gives us a ton of bonus damage at night. So if we go to this top damage window and then quickly switch over to our other stat to give you the baseline with lower sanity, this is sort of the damage that we're going to be dealing with. So 28, 29. Probably get to 30 once we get some rapid in there. So after 2 free mags, we're at about 3132. So that's 32,000, but then we switch over to our Treacherous Tide set, which we'll ideally be using while this red moon is out. So we'll go and switch to that. And then this is the type of damage we do with this armor set. So we were at 3132. Boom. Instantly to 40 something. 36, 37. 38, 39. So almost 40. We hit 40 in the very beginning with this set. So you can see it's a substantial boost in DPS at night during the lunar event when you're running the Treacherous Tide set. And as an added bonus, we're getting double the amount of HP and some bonus survivability shields if our HP drops below 30% because of the passive from the armor set. So much more survivability when you're farming those lunar chests and much more damage. So that is why I would recommend having both of these sets made. Run Blackstone when it's during the daytime because you get more buffs when the lunar moon is not available. But as soon as that red moon comes up, switch to your Treacherous Tide set and just pump out a bunch more damage. And by the way, the damage you just saw was completely unbuffed. We have no food items right now. We didn't use a deviation, didn't attack bullseye on there at all. So let's go ahead and do that and just give you an idea at night what you can potentially do on a dummy when you have like bullseye and your deviation out. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll do the deviation first, and then I will quickly swap to my pistol. We'll have that at the ready, reload that really quick, put a couple marks on it, and see what damage we get here. And this is, again, still without food items. I won't bother with that, but just know that'll give another big boost in damage as well from having the drink and food item. So let's go ahead here. We will summon our deviation, mark the target a couple times. There we go. Switch to our crossbow. And we were at about 40k with the crossbow before, and we'll see what we get to now. Hopefully our deviation starts hitting the right target here. I think he's actually attacking the wrong one. So there's 40,000 consistently. If we just keep going, it's going to be even higher here. So we're consistently at 39. There's 40. 41. And I'm pretty sure that's without our deviation attacking the proper target. So it can get 45 to even 50 when your deviation's hitting the right one. And that's without the food buffs as well. So you'd have even more damage there. So that is the new and improved ultimate critical pulse crossbow build. Blackstone during the day, Treacherous Tides at night. You combine them to get a whirlwind effect of some insane power surge damage. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and found it informative. If you did, be sure to smash that like button, comment down below. I appreciate all of your guys' feedback. Also, if you want to keep up to date on my future content, consider subscribing and turn on that notification bell. And last but not least, if you want to join a killer community of like-minded gamers, feel free to check the link down in the description and join us on the Discord. We've got over 1,000 members in there now, many of which are playing Once Human. So hopefully you jump in and we see you guys around here soon. But until the next one, hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you all later.